Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching the John Woodard Show. There is a great deal of talk these days about the relationship between China and the United States. Many people, both political and non-political, think that the US and China are in a cyber war right now. China must know that a military conflict is not a winnable situation for them, but they believe, the upper hand in cyber activity. And we're going to display what some of the information that we have that would cause you to think otherwise, and them too. In this context, we have as our guest today one of our country's most leading cyber experts. We will talk to him about a wide-ranging list of issues, but there are some things that he can't speak about for security reasons. Also, the topic is both lengthy and complicated, so we have to break this lengthy interview up into smaller portions that we will be able to provide to the public. They can listen to each one and relate that to what they heard before without so much detailed information that it just gets beyond their capability to understand it. And with a podcast, you can go back and re-watch different segments that you might think you need to fill back in with some information you heard before, or make sure that you understood what was said to you. So now I'd like to introduce to you our guest. He is an expert in cybersecurity with more than 40 years experience in the field. He retired from AT&T after 31 years, where he served as Chief Cyber Security Strategist. He currently advises on current cybersecurity as a private consultant. He began his career with AT&T and Bell Laboratories, serving in the Semiconductor Laser Development Department, and later in the Lbs Security Group as a delegate to the Bell Labs Unix Systems Subcommittee, was an early pioneer in the field of computer forensics, and won a Bell Labs Innovation Award. At AT&T, he designed the security architecture with cabinets of the nation's largest corporations, and designed the first healthcare network fully compliant with healthcare information exchange standards. Outside AT&T, he has overseen security for a US government agency and has solved major cases for the FBI and Secret Service. He has served as an officer of the court, as a forensic expert, and has been an expert witness in landmark cybersecurity cases. He designed security architectures for the Department of Defense networks, including some of the most sensitive areas of the government. He has owned and led several professional services firms in the information security field. He serves on the North Carolina Council for Entrepreneurial Development and has consulted with many companies about the complex integration of business and technology. In the past, he has been president of the Eastern North Carolina InfraGard, the public-private partnership between the nation's critical infrastructure operators and the U.S. intelligence community. His background is that of a master's level in electrical engineering, computer science, computer security, and business administration. He is a subject matter expert in strategy, enterprise security, security architecture and design, security governance, risk management, public key infrastructures, identity and access management, authentication, authorization, and access control, regulatory compliance, physical security, business continuity and disaster recovery planning, response and recovery strategy, threat intelligence, and intelligence analysis. If that isn't a mouthful, I don't know what is, but that surely tells you an awful lot about the man that you're looking at right now. He served as Chief Information Security Officer at the World Institute for Security Enhancement, has written advanced security courses, developed advanced security and methodologies, and has taught government, private sector professionals, and law enforcement agents information security, computer forensics, advanced computer forensic sciences, and technical surveillance countermeasures. He holds numerous certifications in security, including the CISSP and Certified Anti-Terrorism Specialist, as well as numerous instructor certifications in security. He currently serves on the advisory board of several leading-edge technology companies. He is a Vietnam-era U.S. Navy veteran where he worked in electronic warfare and electronic intelligence. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to Doug Gould, a friend of Pete Benton, who's a member of our business team. And Pete and Doug have known each other a long time. They're great friends. Doug retired to the Carteret County and lives there now. Pete lives down there. And so I hope that you're going to get an awful lot of useful information from this man. He's got it to give. He's interested in trying to provide information to the public about what the risks are that we face in the China issue that we've been discussing. So thank you very much for watching. Doug, wonderful to have you. Tell me where you would like to start. This is really your show. You're way over my head, so I'm going to kind of let you lead the question, the issues here. You go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me, John. It's a large and complex subject. So I think I'd like to begin by touching on a few of the areas that you need to understand as a consumer, as a citizen, to really understand the whole picture. And I'm just going to mention these and not delve into them at any depth. As you mentioned, we'll probably need to come back for several other recaps to capture all of this. But everyone has heard about the allegation of foreign interference in an election. So why do foreign countries care what we do? Why do they want to collect intelligence? How do they collect intelligence? Why is cybersecurity relevant? Why can people break into computers? Where does that come from? How are there holes in computers? How do hacks occur? I mean, with my background, I could instruct someone in the course of about a day to break into any one of our voting systems or electoral systems. If a significant effort has been made to protect them, it might take a week of instruction to get them there. And then, I come back to this. There are so many things that people don't know about cybersecurity intelligence. For example, North Korea has an institute in Pyongyang where they are graduating 100 expert cybersecurity warriors every month, and they've been doing this for 15 years. So start adding those numbers up. I mean, there are masses and masses and masses of cybersecurity warriors out there who could target the United States. I'm sure they target other countries too. In each case, a country wants to take an advantage or dominate another country, and And so they're using these methods to do that. All of this together, I mean, there's so much to understand in background here. So it's a bit difficult to look at. I have actually have a copy of the affidavits that Sidney Powell has submitted in her Supreme Court case for Arizona. A number of them were online at one point, and they've been since taken down. But I did get a copy of those. Very interesting. Some of the details which have been public talk about how some of the core software in our voting systems was written to be to create the potential for manipulation. So when you hear that our voting systems were manipulated, there is an affidavit which will go, if the Supreme Court hears the case, that it will go before the Supreme Court of an individual who sat with Cesar Chavez in Venezuela at the time that he specified the operating rules for this vote manipulation software. And this same individual also testified under oath in a sworn affidavit that he was present during several elections where Chavez used this vote manipulation software in Venezuela to remain in power, and later Nicolas Maduro took advantage of it when Maduro took over the country. So there is a history of software having been corrupted and countries using that software, dictators or power brokers using that software to not only to gain power, but to retain power. This is real. It happened in Venezuela. We have the affidavit. Now, the company that did this is a company called Smartmatic. And Smartmatic has written the core part of voting machines that are included in the Dominion voting machine software. So, is this possible? Yeah, sure, it's possible. Can I today prove that some person manipulated the software? No, I don't have that evidence personally, and I don't know of anyone who does have the actual electronic wire tracing of somebody doing an attack. However, I look at some things like the forensic report from Michigan. So in Michigan, the court ordered a forensic examination of 22 Dominion voting machines, and the Attorney General of Michigan tried to suppress that report and have it sealed, but the courts overruled him. And I read the full forensic report. One of the things about hacking that's kind of interesting, bad guy breaks into your bank account, and his objective is to steal money. So he compromises your access credentials and gets access to your account, and he transfers money out or does whatever he does with it. But then bad guy also knows that doing that is a crime. And if he gets caught, he's going to jail. So the bad guy wants to cover his tracks. Now, this is typical for all hacking, whether it's a bank account or anything else. The hacker wants to cover their tracks. And typically what they will do is go into the operating system of the computer and begin deleting log records. Your computer has several logs. If you're using Windows, there's a system log, there's a security log, there's an application log. Every program that runs makes an entry in that log. So, at 10:04 and 13 seconds, this program started, it was run by this person, it ran for that long, and we see how the program terminated. All of that information is in the log directories. So as a forensic analyst, I can look in those logs and see who did what when. I can see who logged in, what time they joined the computer, when they turned it on, when it was booted, and all of the things that they did leading up to the point that they performed some bad action that we're interested in. So the hackers know this, and the first thing they want to do is erase the evidence of their presence in the log. or in the logs, there are multiple logs. So in order to do that, they'll go in and delete just those lines that are relevant to them. However, as a forensic analyst, when I look at the computer, it's really interesting. Your computer is doing 20 or 30 things every second. And so often you will have an entry like, 1002.21 seconds, 0.3, 21 seconds, 0.32, 21 seconds, 0.335. It's broken the seconds down into hundredths in the logs just so that it can chronicle what was done and in what order. There's so many things happening. So when I look at a log file, and there's a 10-minute gap, that's not natural. Somebody has gone into the log and manipulated the log data. They have deleted lines out of the log because computers don't sit idle for 10 minutes. If you're doing nothing on your computer, you turn the computer on and let it sit, you're going to have a couple entries every minute at minimum. And so one of the first certain signs of a hack is that somebody's deleted the logs. It's almost always characteristic. Back to the Michigan forensic report on 22 Dominion voting machines. The forensic report, which was published, found that logs for the 2020 election were notoriously absent, but the ones from the 2016 election and prior elections were still present. So what this tells me is, gee, it wasn't a machine error. It wasn't that the computer broke down and scratched its disk and wiped out all the logs. Just the ones from this recent election were deleted. And that, as I said before, that kind of activity is a prima facie indicator that some individual, a person, had a specific intent in deleting those records. So, as we begin to look at all of these things, it's pretty amazing. I looked at the affidavit, and if you get a chance to find it online, in Sidney Powell's lawsuit against the state of Arizona, it is Exhibit 1 in the testimonies that she's provided, the evidence she provided. The testimony of an individual whose name is redacted, thankfully, because I'm sure he'd be a target if it wasn't. This individual sat with Nicolas Maduro when he met with the Smartmatic company executives, and his specification was that he wanted a voting system that would take the individual's fingerprint, and it would record that person had voted, but in no way would it associate the vote with the person. And one of the reasons for this is so that the vote could be changed later, and we could not go back and audit whether John Woodard's vote, as he put it in the machine, is the vote that was counted. There's no way to audit that because there's no connection between the two. Now, a lot of us look at an election and go, gee, I don't want somebody holding against me my choices for a vote because they're mine and they're private. And I get that. On the other hand, the consequence of that philosophy is now we can't audit the vote. So how does voting work? It's kind of interesting. We go in and we mark a ballot. We may have a piece of paper with some circles and dots on it, and we make our mark on the paper and slide it into the vote counting machine, and we think we're done. Well, that's only the beginning. So at every voting precinct, there is a voting machine that takes your paper ballot, and it reads the dots and the marks on the paper ballot. It then, at the end of the day or at regular intervals, however it's configured, will transmit the data from that voting precinct to a vote tabulation center. So in North Carolina, that's in Raleigh. All the precincts in North Carolina have to get their precinct data to the vote tabulation center in Raleigh. Now, remember, the machine has logged in North Carolina. We have a barcode. You check in to vote, and they write a number on the paper ballot, which I presume can be traced back to who did it, but I don't know of anybody ever having done that tracing. That paper ballot, you mark it, you stick it in the machine, it's scanned, and at some point, those results are transferred to Raleigh. And in Raleigh, they begin to count the vote and to add up all the votes from all the different precincts. And again, the identity of the individual and the data of the vote are not associated. So we can't put those together and audit those in the future. There's no way to go back except to go back to the paper ballot and look at each individual paper ballot. There's no way to identify who voted what. And I still, your name is still not on the ballot. So that would become very difficult to do. There are a number of different methods which cause vulnerabilities in these software systems. One that is relevant here is what we call a man-in-the-middle attack. So we'll talk about basic communication. You know, I'm talking to John here, and John is on the other end of the phone call. We've all played the game telephone as children, which is kind of fun to see how people mishear something and transfer it to the next person. But I'm speaking in John's hearing. We're doing this over Zoom, which means that all of the stuff we're doing is being translated to electronic bits and bytes and going over a wire. The way a man-in-the-middle attack works is that somebody gets into the communication system between John and I. They receive everything that comes from me, and they retransmit it to John. Now, if we were just talking and it was audio alone, they could probably record some of my words, rearrange those in an edit, and play back the recording that they had made up. That would be possible. And in that way, they would take the information that came from me, they would alter it and send it on. And John might be fooled by this fake message. That's a good example of a man-in-the-middle attack. And I think that the way the Smartmatic voting systems have been manipulated, certainly in the affidavit, it indicates that the manipulation of votes in Venezuela occurred during the transmission of that data from the voting precincts to the voting tabulation centers. In order to make that happen in Venezuela, in the affidavit, in the sworn testimony that's sworn before the Supreme Court under penalty of perjury, the affidavit, this individual states that Chavez, at one point, in order to change the vote to the outcome that he wanted, actually had the operators of the internet in Venezuela shut the entire internet down for 2 hours, during which the vote tallies were changed. And when the internet came back online, the votes were different, and Chavez was now in the lead, and he got the outcome he desired. I think it's very interesting that a number of our American vote counting operations were shut down for exactly the same 2 hours.